Sterilizing, buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they war. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die. Cause God will give. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force of air. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. Excuse me, I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.tv, and I'm your host for the next 2 hours. And had some interesting calls last night on Revolution Radio from some ladies in Calgary area, Alberta people, and they seem to be, but it's ladies. It seems to be ladies all the time. The ladies seem to be more on the ball than the guys for some oddball reason. They seem to be more ticked off than the guys. I guess they don't get sidetracked by sports or whatever. But the ladies do seem to be getting in a bad mood about what they see going on in this so-called nation. And that's a good thing. You don't want to spurn a woman. And there's a little Canadiana for you. G'day, eh? So today, I guess, we'll just talk about some stuff. And if somebody wants to call in and got something they want to talk about, I'd be more than happy to talk about it. The phone number here is 718-717-8296. If you're on Skype and you're hooked up to me, you can just let me know and you can come in that way. I like these calls because it gives me an indication of what people are thinking about. There's so much chaos out there right now that there's so many subjects, but all of the subjects are, as the UN likes to say, interconnected. And it's that interconnectedness that is messing everybody up. People are on this side of that and that side of this, not realizing that all of this stuff is coming out of the same place. And it's all being stewed up by the same people. And Standing Rock is a prime example of a mess. You know, we've got the Greens in there. We've got all these different factions in there. The chiefs are all doing the bidding of the UN, as is all the politicians and the teachers and the preachers and all those people. Generally, the chiefs are doing very well for themselves. They live in nice houses and seem to have lots of cash laying around, while their people are not doing so good. And that goes through the general population as well. So there's not really a lot of difference there. And as they genocided the native society. They're in the process of genociding the society that you thought was solid. And so we have to come to terms with that. This is genocide. And again, I want to take my hat off, if I wore a hat, which I don't, but if I did, I'd take it off, to the vets that are apparently headed to or have already arrived at Standing Rock. As I said last night, I think the vets are finally getting it through their skulls that they got hoodwinked, that these wars they've been in have been phony wars. They had nothing about protecting America. It had everything to do about facilitating the corporations and the United Nations and everybody pushing their agendas. So I think the vets are finally starting to get it. I wish the police would get it. It's all about protecting the state. The people don't enter into the state. The state doesn't recognize men, women, and children, the flesh and blood, does not recognize them, doesn't recognize them at all. They just live in a paper world. And you've been attached to a piece of paper. And that is the big problem. Men and women and children, the flesh and blood, are not recognized by these so-called governments, nor by the legal system. So the legal system has deceived you, your so-called government has deceived you, your politicians have deceived you, your preachers have deceived you, your teachers, your union bosses have all deceived you. And they're all pushing the UN agenda, the globalist corporate agenda, which by nature and by definition is amoral. So, what you going to do? Now, I think what I'll do is I want to talk about natural gas here in a little bit. And I don't know if Kathy Hamilton's online or not. But if she is, I'm hoping that we can get her in here because she's got this nailed to the wall. Because they're pushing here now the rural areas. They've been in fracking in the rural areas. They flogged the rural areas with wind turbines. This is all a method to drive people off the land. The fracking has poisoned a lot of water and caused a lot of other trouble. The windmills have driven people from their homes and helped to drive electricity prices through the frickin' ceiling. And so now they're coming in with natural gas, they say, to the rural areas that aren't presently supplied by it. And the problem is that being liars that they are, they always leave something out. And with this natural gas, because they want to end the use of fossil fuels. So if you want to end the use of fossil fuels, what are you doing bringing all this gas in, which apparently is a fossil fuel? So they say, oh, the rural areas here in Ontario are going to get natural gas. And that'll help combat the high electricity prices, which used to be some of the lowest on the planet. And now they're some of the highest on the planet. How'd that happen? And it's all about corporate. So they run these deals with the corporations, put in the windmills. They get ridiculous amount of money for producing nothing. And, of course, that's going to drive the price up. But as Morris Strong and Rockefeller and the boys say, well, the end user's on the hook for all the costs. And the end user, of course, is you. And the idea is to drive you out of your homes, make it so damned expensive, so inconvenient that you just don't see the point in it anymore. But the natural gas they're talking about is not natural gas. It's renewable natural gas. Well, anytime something has the tag renewable or green attached to it, you know you're dealing with a fraud and a scam and a deception. You know it. You got to know it by now. But it boggles my mind. Because the same people that embraced wind and then said, well, this sucks, are now embracing this renewable natural gas. But they don't know it's renewable natural gas. Oh boy, we're getting natural gas. We can change over and heat our homes with natural gas, and then we can drop the cost of heating our homes, which most of the people here heat right now with either propane or oil or electricity. So they're all, and all those prices are through the roof. So they're all gung-ho to embrace natural gas because they all know that natural gas is a hell of a lot cheaper. Problem is, this is not natural gas. It is renewable natural gas. And the same companies that brought you the wind turbines and are feeding off of you as they enrich themselves from that scam, the same companies are on board with the renewable natural gas, which is biogas. And I was talking to one guy downtown who's a bit of a builder or whatever, entrepreneur. He was all jacked up about the natural gas coming, and I told him it's not natural gas. It's biogas. And he said, well, that can't be right. You could never produce enough biogas. Exactly. But these same companies that put up the windmill and got the 20-year contracts are going to get 20-year contracts to make biogas. And it ain't going to be cheap to produce, and it ain't going to be plentiful. So if you live in rural Ontario and you're all jacked up about this natural gas coming to your town or your rural area, you better think twice before you switch over, because now you're going to have the cost of switching your systems over, which is not going to be cheap. But it'll be sold to you, well, if you switch over, the price of natural gas is considerably less than what you're heating with now. But guaranteed, once you get switched over and have spent the money, and they start building these biodigesters, the cost of that so-called natural gas is going to go through the roof. The idea is to run you out of your house. Period. And I don't know what it takes for people. I watch people all the time. They embrace something and then later on realize that the thing was a scam, but it's already in place. But then the next thing comes along, and for some reason, they can't connect the dots. I heard people around here, what do you complain about the windmills? That's clean, green, free energy. You have to look at them and go, like, are you retarded or something? I always like to think about when Tesla and that built the generators down at Niagara Falls, I believe. And he was an absolute visionary, and he just told them what to build, and they didn't know what the hell they were making, and had no clue any of this stuff was going to work. They just did what they were told, and when they threw the switch, by gumbos, it worked. And but must work in the background. I don't understand what that means. I guess that's putting links in. So, we have this problem of people trying to wrap their brain around things. Now, I was talking to Duck last night, and I don't know if he's going to get mad at me about this, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyways. He's talking to his kid, and his kid just kind of come out of the blue with a question: what's communism? Well, communism is what we have here. They call it a socialism. It's not socialism, and socialism is communism. Morris Strong and the boys said they believe in capitalism for themselves and socialism for everyone else. which is really communism. In other words, they wish to control everything on the planet and divvy it out. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm going to bring Kathy in here in a couple minutes because I want to talk about this natural gas. I want to talk about what she's been fighting for a considerable amount of time, and that's the Northland Pump Storage Site right above their town. And that is a disaster waiting to happen, but they keep pushing it. And it is also another one of these long-term, we don't produce anything scams sold to the public on this renewable energy nonsense idea. So we'll get her in here in a few minutes because I really want to talk about this so-called natural gas. The media knows what's going on, but they don't say renewable natural gas. They just say natural gas, and then people go, "Oh boy, natural gas." So they keep the people in the dark. You know, with the windmills. Oh, the tourists were going to fly in here, and they were going to have busloads of tourism to come and see these wonderful fields of clean, green, free energy. Well, now when tourists come up here, they go, "What are you people, brain dead? Why did you allow this to happen? You've destroyed the area." So we don't have busloads of tourists like we were told. And all this economic activity that was going to go on didn't. And so now nothing's changed except our hydro bills have gone through the roof, and our landscape is as ugly could possibly be. And they're going to do the very same thing with gas. Same players, same basic contract, and the people are going to get screwed over one more time until they can't afford to be in their own homes. Now, if you look at communism, it says that what's basically in communism, you don't own your house. In the environmental movement, what's not sustainable? Private property. All property must be held in the public. That's straight out of the Communist Manifesto. Because according to the UN boys, private property is a form of social injustice. Because if you own a place and somebody else doesn't, well, then you could sell your place and profit from it where the other couldn't, and therefore that's a form of social injustice. So instead of everybody owning their own home, and my attitude is when you're born in your nation, you should be deeded land immediately. But that's not how the state operates. So, you know, the idea is if private property is not sustainable and it's a form of social injustice, then the only other option is that everyone lives in state housing, which is communism. And the communism decides how much water you're going to get, how much food you're going to get, how much education you're going to get, and so on and so forth, how much medical care you're going to get. And that is the plan for the West. And it's not news. I mean, it certainly isn't news. You know, way back in whatever year that was, that Norman Dodds, I think it was in the 50s or early 60s, I believe it was in the 50s, that they were, the Reese Commission was brought forward to find out what these tax-exempt foundations were up to, and the guy from the Ford Foundation said, well, that's simple. Our job is to move forward the Sovietization of America. So it's not news. Warburg said in 1950, we will have world government by consent or conquest. And that world government will be a communist government. So it's most definitely not news. You know, they, after World War I, and they tried to flog the League of Nations on America, Canada signed up, as did a whole slew of other nations, but America wouldn't sign up and got Wilson's panties all in a knot. But they were fighting communism after World War I, the first Red Scare. After World War II, when they got Israel and a United Nations made, that was considered the Red Scare too. And that's where McCarthyism popped up from, trying to alert the people that the communists were taking control of the nation. And now we're at World War III, which is a spiritual psychological war. And the Reds, or the communist, if you will, control your government, your schools, your universities, your medical system. They are so infiltrated into the society that most people don't even recognize it. But it is most definitely communism. And you will not own your own home, depending how old you are. But in the end, you will live in state housing. The only people that will live in private homes will be the politicians and the top professors, and those they will hold up as the light for the rest of the people. But those very same amoral people are the ones that are going to tell you you can't have red meat. And they use the environmental system to push the communism. Better to eat bugs than a cattle beast, because a cattle beast takes too much water. And the world's short of water, which is another lie, because every freaking drop of water that was here the day this place was created is here today. It didn't go anywhere. It can't go anywhere. So this idea that we have a water shortage is the biggest joke. It's even a bigger joke than climate change. These are bad jokes, by the way. They're not good jokes. They're not belly laugh jokes. They're piss me off jokes. And the jokers are having a laugh at us for being so damn stupid. They can't believe how stupid we are, but they said they would make us this stupid. Brzezinski said that. 2.5, 3 generations of what we're doing, these people won't even know how to pick their own noses. I went down to get my coffee today, and I watched these Walking Dead, basically, wandering into the corner store to buy their allotment of lottery tickets and the converse say, oh, it's a really big lottery this time. Nobody won it last time. Oh, well, we better get more tickets. And they're shelling out what money they got to buy the tickets because life has gotten so dark they see the only way out is by winning the lottery. The fight's been basically taken out of most of the people. The intelligence has been removed from most of the people. And they wander around like they've been lobotomized. It's a hard thing to look at. It's a hard thing to watch. And we got to turn it around. You know, and last night, when Helen called in, you know, it's absolutely true. If you have a child, you know, she said, we got to get the kids out of the school system. Bingo. Absolutely true. You got to get the kids away from the state schools. All you got to do is look at what the state schools did to the natives, the native children. And make no bones about it. That state school is doing the same thing to your children. Pumping them full of needles, pumping their heads full of garbage, lying to them every hour that they're in the schools. They're taking all the skills that of any use to someone who has a capacity to think away from them so that they can't think. They're not taught to think. They're taught to follow and obey authority. And my attitude is if you have a child in the public school system, then you, the parent, are part of the responsibility of the abuse those children are under and experiencing. You, the parent, have a responsibility to get that kid away from these psychopaths, these sociopaths. Because to leave your child in that school, it just tells me that you don't give a damn about your own child. Because if you have a clue what the education system is doing to your child, you would either go in, a whole slew of parents would go in and kick everybody off your school board out the frickin' door and take the thing over and rewrite a curriculum that is of some use to your child, or you get your child the hell out of the school. But they got both parents working, just trying to keep a roof over the head and food on the table now. How are we supposed to get them out of the school? Well, you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to start neighborhood schools. Doesn't matter if that school's got 2 children in it or 20 children in it or 200 children in it. Get them away from the public school system. If you fail to do that, then you're just saying you have no respect for your child and that you don't mind your child being abused. You know, it's not just sexual abuse. Mental abuse is just, if not more damaging than sexual abuse. And these kids are being abused. What is all of this? I'm just getting stuff punched into me here. I'm just trying to read some through some of it, but I'm really particularly ticked off at the school system. So hats off to Helen for bringing that fact up that the kids got to get out of the school system. She's absolutely correct. The other thing that I have a lot of trouble with is explaining to people why they need to run in the local elections. Now, you've heard me say that the elections aren't even lawful or legal. They're a fraud. Yes, they are. They're an absolute fraud because no man or woman can vote. Why? Because the state doesn't recognize men and women. They recognize paper. They recognize the agent or well, you're the agent for the fictional entity. It's the fictional entity who gets to vote. You act as a proxy for that fiction. A fiction can't deal with reality, and reality cannot deal with a fiction. And the legal system and the state are fictions. So therefore, a live man or woman cannot be part of something that isn't real, because men and women are in fact real. So how do you run in an election if you can't run in an election? Well, you just do it. Now, I heard some excuses. I saw some videos, I forget what they were called, out of Australia, and they were doing some really good work. And then someone asked and said, well, instead of just coming in here raising hell, why don't you guys run? And the guy from Australia says, we can't because the elections aren't even real. And then if we do get elected, then we have to take an oath to serve the state, not the people, not the men and women. So therefore, we can't run. No, that's an excuse. That's that damned excuse again. Well, we got to do something, but we can't do anything because. You go and you run, you get yourself elected, you get your friends to run. I mean, The math is so simple. Anybody that has any knowledge of marketing understands how simple it is. It's all a numbers game. So if you have 5 counselors, you run 3 to 1. So you need 15 people to stand up to the plate. Now, I don't care how small your community, your municipality is, or your town is. If it's only 2,000 people, if you can't roast up 15 people to run to get control of these damn councils and stop implementing the UN agendas, if you can't do that, then you deserve to live under tyranny. All this talk and all this stuff that we do is just firing rocks out into the air and hope it hits the castle wall. But when that rock hits the castle wall, it's going to bounce off. You got to get inside the gates. The enemy is inside the gates and has been for a long, long time. Or the foxes and the weasels are inside the house. They've taken over the house. And they've destroyed your house. And the only way to get rid of the weasel and the fox is to get into the house and give them the boot. Our job is to protect the house, not hand it over. And that's what we've done. By continually turning a blind eye because of the propaganda that's fired at you, telling you that people like McCarthy and them were crazy. And they give this onslaught of propaganda from every angle they can hit you with it until you bow down. And they can continue their trek towards what they want. And that is simply total and complete control over every resource, man, woman, and child on the planet. And they control everything. How do you think it's going to work out for you? How the hell do you think that's going to work out for you? I'll tell you how it's going to work out for you. Not well. So I get really ticked when I hear excuses of why people can't do something. To say I can't do anything, and it really bugs me because, you know, over the years, how many young men and women have been pulled from their families and sent overseas into illegal wars designed to move the globalist program forward of world communism? And how many of those kids came home in body bags? Way too many. But you say, well, we'll go over to a foreign country and we'll bomb them, but we can't step up to the plate and put $100 or $200 down and run in the local election. Nobody's shooting at you. Can't do it. I've heard every excuse there is to hear. Well, I don't know enough about politics. I don't really understand municipal government. Yaddy frickin' yaddy yaddy yah. These are excuses. They're not legitimate reasons why you can't run. They are excuses why you can't run. And all that does is show you're weak of the mind and weak in the spine. As you watch your nation go down the toilet, you can't seem to pick yourselves up enough to do what needs to be done. Nobody's asking you to pick up a gun. Nobody's asking you to go overseas. Nobody's going to ask you to dodge bullets simply to understand what is bothering not only you, but your neighborhood. Pretty much whatever's bothering you is bothering your neighbors. So to create the discussion is pretty simple. But if you have the knowledge you require to know what's going on, now you get to give it to the people. And if you run 3-1, your message, the real message, the truth, will overpower the liars and these amoral a-holes that call themselves your local council. Then you will get majority vote in that council. I mean, if you've only got 5 people in your council, you only need 3 for majority vote. And if you run 15, you can be pretty much sure you're going to get 3 of them elected. And now you can get down and get the brass tacks and get to work. But all I hear is excuses. Excuse after excuse after excuse. And they say, well, why would I want to run and be involved in something that's a fraud? Well, you're either going to get in there and you're going to wrestle that fraud to the ground, or you're just going to stay outside and let the fraud continue. It's the only place you can get your hands on some power that you can make a change. Now, the state has every right, because the state created the councils, created the municipalities. Now, the state has the power to pull you out of there, to shut that council down completely. If you ain't doing what the state tells you to do, and the state's doing what the UN and the globalists are telling it to do, they do have the power, because they created the municipalities to walk in there, shut it down, pull everybody out, and put their own people back in. But should that happen, that just shows how corrupt this whole system is to those who voted you in. It's all about opening eyes. But if you get enough councils, they ain't going to do that. They're going to come and they're going to try and negotiate with you. Okay? But you don't negotiate with them. Now, who's holding the power? Where do all the people in your nation live? And I don't care what nation you're in. Where do all the men and women and children live in your nation? They all live in a municipality, or a town, or a city, which are all municipalities. So where does the power lay? The power lays at the local level. That's where all the power is. The power is not in the president's office. The power is not in the prime minister's office. The power is in the hands of the men and the women. All they have to do is step up to the plate and exercise it. That's how you get back to law. That's how you get out of this stupid legal system that has enslaved every man, woman, and child from the day they're born. But you got to participate. If you can't participate, then you're going to lose. Sometimes I think the people want to lose. Don't know why that would be. Just they've been beat down so long, they don't know how to stand up anymore. But we can do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to rock the boat till it flips. There's very few of these people who control everyone else's lives. All those have to do is stand up, and those few have no chance but to run. Okay? Instead of us being afraid of them, let's make them afraid of us. And they see you start to take over these town councils, they know where the power is laying. You can put a scare in them. And if we aren't prepared to put a scare in them, then we're going to remain scared. If we don't bring forward our authority, if we don't exercise our authority, then we're going to be enslaved by their false authority, of which we've always been enslaved by. Freedom and peace are easily attained. You just got to step up to the plate. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. People go out of their way to make excuses why they can't do just about anything. But like I said, I don't care how small your community is. If you live someplace, then you best start talking to your fellow men and women and start discussing what it is that's got them pissed off right now. What is it that's driving you nuts? Is it the vaccines are jamming into your children's arms? Is it the fact that people who get sick end up losing their homes? Is it the fact that your manufacturing's been taken overseas? Is it the fact that, there's so many subjects now. You're going to hit one. You're going to hit a nerve on just about anybody you talk to. And they'll start talking, and they'll start emptying their guts on you to tell you how bad things are. And that, my friends, is a potential candidate. And you got to work it. You have to become engaged. We can do these damn radio shows till, they do like they did to Christopher Christopherson in America with a K when he got up to the mic there that one day and they told him no, and he just said, no, I'm going ahead. And they just put a bullet in his brain. So we can do that. Or we can get moving now and put a stop to it. Somebody's going to win this thing. And if it ain't us, it's them. And if it's them, all you got to do is look at the millions of people who were obliterated off this planet through the introduction of communism. And what is the goal of the globalists? Besides you not owning a private vehicle or private home, or any kind of private so-called property. The mass extermination of most of the population on the planet. Which is communism. So don't think environment, think in communism. Because they are connected, they are the same. The environment is merely what they like to refer to as a mechanism. They need mechanisms, and the environment is a mechanism. In order for them to get you to consent to giving everything up. And that's really sick. Conquest is ugly. But to simply sit there and consent to your demise is really pathetic. I can't even find words to describe how pathetic that is. But that's what they've got people. They've got people. We got to save the planet. Well, at your peril. And, they're messing things up so bad now. Even the most brain dead see that there's something really nefarious going on out there. I talked to a lady today at the corner store, and she came in, and she's only there for a minute. And then she kind of lost a little bit, and she's going, I got nowhere to live. Now, we're importing Muslims here, and we're giving them something like $3,600 a month, get them set up, and they don't even like us. But our own people, they're going to food banks, got no place to live, can't afford their hydro bills. Meanwhile, Tinkerbell is handing over billions of dollars to everywhere but the men and women and children in this so-called nation. And people ought to be getting really, really ticked off about this. We got seniors who helped build this place who can't afford anything. You know, I hear the most sad stories. You know, they don't eat because they got to buy their pills, or they don't eat because they can't afford their heat, and so on and so forth. And yet these migrants, these UN globalist corporate created migrants, they're collecting something like $3,600 a month, which is more than a large number of people in this country. They would just smile to me making $3,600 a month. So, you know, you got to care about your men and your women. You got to care about the folks in your nation. If you can turn a blind eye to what you see around you happening to your own people, then what kind of man or woman are you? You just turn a blind eye. I mean, an awful lot of people that listen to these shows are really getting it through their heads what's actually going on and what the history is, and that we are still slaves in Roman times. Nothing has really changed. It's been rebranded a few times, but not much else has changed. And one of these days, I'm going to pull up a copy of Roman slave law and read portions of it on one of the shows, just so you understand that Roman slave law is basic your civic duty laws now. Citizen slave, no difference. You still are a Roman slave. And it's about time we got rid of that nonsense. You know, it's the time. How can a fiction have the same rights as a living man or woman? It's not possible. It's possible in legal jargon, but it's not possible in reality. And yet we've got caught up in this thing. Yet we've got to shake it off of us. It's feeding on us. It's killing us. It's sucking the life out of the living. And we need to stop that somehow. And one of the ways to do it is pull the kids out of the schools, get them far away from this legal education system as possible, and run in the local election. It doesn't even matter if you win. The fact that you're out chatting with these people, that's the important part, because now you're having conversations with people who are afraid to say anything. But what I found during elections is people are much more open about what's bugging at them, and that gives you the opportunity to explain why what is happening, because most of the people still do not realize why it's happening. They don't understand the background. They just are reacting to what is irritating them at any given time. So it's a great time to connect with people. It's a great time to help people strengthen their minds and their spines, because this is a war. There's no other way to describe it. This is a war. And in the end, the victor takes the spoils. And if they win and they are victorious, they will take control of every aspect of your life, every aspect of your death, and control of all the resources in your nation. And if we allow that to happen, you are beaten. I don't want to see this happen. And the solutions are actually quite simple. And if other people have other solutions, by all means, call in and give us your solution. The solution is not violence. They're begging you to get violent. And so far, so good. Most people are starting to understand that that's exactly what they want. They want violence, and they're going out of their way to try to create the violence. And so far, for the most part, the men and women have been very sensible. Even out at Standing Rock, all the abuse they're taking from their so-called government. How could your government abuse the men and women like that? How could that possibly be your government? It isn't your government. It's a corporation who looks at you simply as an asset of the corporation. And it's no different than the Rockefellers in the mines when they would bring in the strikebreakers and they would shoot the strikebreaker or the strikers and that. Same difference, same thing today. The thugs were there to protect the corporation, and the thugs are still there to protect the corporation, only this time the thugs are wearing police uniforms. Same thugs. Same damn thugs. There to protect the state, which is the corporation. And I think people are really starting to understand that. I think even some of the police are starting to understand it. And obviously, if the vets are headed to Standing Rock, they finally understand it. And they're starting to rock the boat. And it's a good thing. Now, I don't want to spend 2 hours preaching here, so I'm hoping that I'm going to try anyways. I'm going to try and pull Kathy in here because I really want to talk, because this is all local again. This is all like global to local stuff, and I don't know anybody that's more on top of it than Kathy Hamilton. And she's got her fight down there with the pump storage site, of which she can explain to people. Very nefarious situation. And so I'm going to see if I can't get a hold of her. I'm sure she's seen. I found this thing. It's almost like the same thing as the Wind Association. Only this is the Biofuel Association. Same lingo, same templates, same MO, same everything. And now this newest fraud is being foisted upon the people. Then it's bloody ridiculous that that's what's going on. And so let's see if we can't get Kathy. One ringy dingy. Two ringy dingies.
I'm here.
Aha! We got her on the second ringy dingy.
Yeah, I just have to mute the player just a second. Okay. All right.
Has anybody ever made a song called Kathy before?
I don't know.
Well, they should.
Good night, Kathleen. That's the only one I know of. So anyway, yeah, I'm still working, so you may hear some background noise.
Well, that's fine. Okay. You're always working.
Yeah, well, okay, so you were talking about the natural gas expansion program, yeah. Okay, well, there's a lot, of course, that nobody without a 100% accurate crystal ball can never know. But, yeah, I noticed that there was something about that. And now I can throw you a link here. This is where I downloaded documents related to this. I'm not sure if it'll work or not. Let's just see here. You have your Skype open.
Yeah, I put one in here. It's called Solid Waste Management developing the renewable natural gas market on Ontario. I'll put that in the chat. I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about, but it explains an awful lot. It's the very same as the wind scam.
Okay, the documents that I first noticed, and actually I just kind of lucked out because it was in our Hastings County Council meeting agenda for October 27th. And what I was really taking a look at closely in that agenda was the proposed so-called tree cutting bylaw that was actually a forest conservation bylaw. And that got shot down. But while I was going through that agenda, and of course, at that time, again, I've just sent you the link that I used, whether they still are or not, all of the background documents were linked from the HTML version of that agenda. And another part of that agenda was dealing with this, let me just see here. Okay, the OFA partnership announcement to secure natural gas access in rural Ontario, and that was agenda item E. So I don't know if you've got that called up, if you're seeing linked background documents there or not.
I'm just getting it here now. Oh, I think I clicked the wrong one. Just a second. Oh, it's the same. Did you put a link in? Where did you put your link?
Oh, in your Skype, not the...
Okay, just a second.
Yeah. Oh, put it in the wrong Skype window, right?
Where is my... Where's my freaking message thing?
Would you like me to put it in the UCY radio instant message window?
Yeah, because for some reason or another, my
all right, just a minute here.
thing here isn't showing up right now.
Okay.
I just throw it into the...
Okay, all right, okay.
I'll get it from there. I keep bringing up the one I put in.
Got it? Yeah, it was the Hastings County Council.
Oh, here it is. Here, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to put that in. I'm not in the chat right now. So if that calls the background documents I'm talking about, then they should be linked they were linked from there.
Okay, but the important part of this is this Hastings County link. It doesn't really matter where you live. You're going to find the same stuff.
Well, especially here in Ontario, this seems, well, again, I'm sure it's elsewhere, but
yeah, I mean, it's
right now what I'm talking about is an Ontario initiative. It's a province-wide, but those documents really made me wonder, the linked documents from there, because, of course, I had read previously a really interesting document that was posted, an article that was posted to a site called Master Resource, and that link, I'm just going to give you the link to this one too, because this was really an interesting article, and having already read this article, which was about the strategy for achieving deep decarbonization, and in that article, it pointed out that part of the deep decarbonization strategy was to allow the use of natural gas, which is, I'm talking about traditional natural gas, which of course is demonized as just another fossil fuel. And so in that strategy, it was pointed out that the only allowable use in the future for that fossil fuel would be to generate electricity. So the goal is the electrification of everything for the consumer. Okay. Unfortunately, one of the more efficient uses of natural gas is direct consumer end use. So it's not as efficient to use it to generate electricity and then have that electricity used by the consumers for heating and cooking and whatever. So that article, it points out the inefficiencies of, say, a natural gas water heater used by an end consumer versus an electric water heater that's powered by electricity produced from natural gas.
Okay.
So that's a really interesting article. So having read that one already, that's what made me wonder when I started reading these documents about this new push for natural gas access all over rural Ontario. Because you can imagine how much it would cost to put gas pipelines down every dirt gravel road all over rural Ontario.
Well, our municipality is like 12,000 people, 7,000 in town thereabouts, and the rest out in the countryside. And a couple other very, very tiny little municipalities, mostly rural, almost 80-90% rural. So we're not talking about a lot of homes. It may cover possibly max 20,000 people, which as a population. So, you're probably looking at 8,000 homes, somewhere in there, with a price tag of $100 million to bring the lines in.
Okay, I just found a current link to probably all of the same background documents that were in the Hastings County Council agenda, and this is from the EOWC site. And this was published, it says October 5th, 2016. So they obviously had, what I saw in the agenda for Hastings County Council on the 27th was copies of what had already been. Yeah, okay, so right here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 linked documents from the EOWC site. So there's a news release about this new partnership. Okay, so this is a partnership between the OFA, which is the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, which is our de facto regional government here in Eastern Ontario, and the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus. So,
and I'm going to put all this stuff in the chat. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
yeah, that one last
people need to go to their own, county or municipality and search out similar documents. Yeah, because I can pretty much guarantee you're going to find them.
Look for natural gas expansion programs. But again, you've got 3 unelected groups, right, that are very politically influential, partnering together to bring about a natural gas expansion program to all the rural areas. And this is, of course, it's sold as an economic development opportunity, Again, there'll be jobs and, all these pipelines. And, of course, it's being pitched to the rural people. It's going to save you money because, of course, their electricity costs have been horrendous because the delivery charges are higher wherever you have lower density population.
Right.
So,
right.
Which is, again, it fits into the plan.
Right.
So, rural Ontario has really been punished with electricity prices, the rural areas. But it looks like, my guess is that this is going to sort of even things out because so much of urban Ontario actually uses natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will flip the coin, and what will happen, this is just a guess, but it would make sense that when this goes through, all of a sudden you're going to see the gas prices in urban Ontario just skyrocket.
Well, it only makes sense because
it has to
because
why?
Yeah, they want you energy poor, but I mean the very fact that the Ontario Energy Board, which is not part of Ontario, which was legislated into existence by Ontario, is the entity who decides who has the authority and the power to set the rates. So they've driven electricity through the roof. So it only stands to reason that the OEB sets the rates for electricity and gas.
Well,
so it only stands to reason.
Well, and here's what made me wonder is from now. Okay, so this is from the Partnership Talking Points document that is in those. Okay, it's the last one in the list on the EOWC site. And here's what Don McCabe, who was the president of the OFA until recently, I believe he actually just lost his bid for re-election. I can't even tell you who the new head of it is. But this is some of the statements from him in the Partnership Talking Points that made me wonder. He said, it is our contention that an achievable level of natural gas access will save up to $1 billion in energy costs for Ontario farmers and rural residents, and add another tool to address our climate change mitigation concerns. So they went on and he said the program will require public investment in the pipeline infrastructure and a viable rural rate for gas set by the Ontario Energy Board.
Right.
A viable rural rate, specifically rural. So this is specifically to appeal to rural gas customers that we don't have yet, that they want to create.
Right, but the fact is that this isn't natural gas. This is renewable natural gas, right?
Well, at the moment, there is natural gas flowing through the natural gas.
Exactly, but when you read their documents, like you call, the FIT programs and that, the same outfits, Enbridge and EPCOR and all these other outfits that were involved in the wind are lining up for contracts. Mm-hmm. That when they put the lines in to expand into rural Ontario, there's all kinds of documents out there about the end of the use of natural gas, fossil natural gas, and to replace it with renewable natural gas. And that requires these biodigesters and that, which these big global companies are going to input with contracts for 20 years or better, and with a stable income coming out of your pocket. And because as they try to put more renewable gas into the line, then there's only one way for the gas prices to go, and that's up.
Yeah. Well, now, the other interesting statement, the other one that really made me wonder, I believe it's the second document on the list of 5 there on the EOWC link I gave you. It was from the Rural Ontario Natural Gas Backgrounder document. And, what they said in there was government stimulus in the form of 0% loans for sufficient time to allow annual savings to pay down aid to construction and appliance conversions, along with loan and grant programs to stimulate micro CHP. Okay, so and this is typical. I'm trying to think of the CHP, combined heat and power. So we already have those. Installations will result, they're talking micro CHP, so likely for individual use, will result in a hand up, not a hand out, that our rural farm and rural community residents so rightly deserve. Now, so when you start talking about, loan and grant programs and government stimulus in the form of 0% loans to pay down the aid to construction and appliance conversions, well, that money has to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
So, obviously, there's only so many places it can come from. Either it's going to come from raised electricity rates for everybody else, and then perhaps, or perhaps from raising the rates of existing natural gas customers to cover, all of these grants and loans to the new customers, plus the long-term lower rural rates than they will be urban. But either way,
well, what's happening is that we are being circled by high so-called renewable energy prices, and our inexpensive fuels like our natural gas and our coal and our oil, that pipeline to the West Coast they want to build, all of our accessible natural resources are being shipped out of the country at low rates of cost and headed for the east to fuel their plants, while we are getting busted by not being allowed to use our own. Like it says here that there are the number of coal-fired plants located in China is 2,000.
Yeah.
China uses more coal than the rest of the world combined, and that's where all your jobs went, right?
Yeah.
You know, so you got to go back to Morris Strong. Isn't the only hope for the planet in being Chinese? And Rockefeller apparently is Chinese too. Just kidding, but that's where they planted themselves. Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized nations collapse? And that's exactly what they're doing. They're collapsing our nations.
Yeah.
And it's all interdependent, or interconnected. I hate all their language with a passion. But this idea that we've got to close down how many coal plants do we have in Ontario? 4 total or something?
Oh, I can't remember. I know there were 2. I believe there were 2. I think it was Nanticoke and Lambton that we had already put the scrubbers on. You know, so
there
was nothing wrong with them. They mothballed them. I remember one guy online that, it made sense. He was begging the government to at least preserve them in case we needed them again, so that they could fire them back up. But I do believe they put a massive solar farm, did they not, down at
I think
Lambton?
so. Yeah. Yeah, they're frying birds down there now with the solar panels. So if you want some fried chickadee on a bun, just slide on down to where the coal plant used to be. No, it's a massive. I don't know how people don't notice any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know. So, but I'm really. You'd mentioned something a little bit about. You'd sent me something about some MP or whatever, or MPP, yammering on about the Northland pump storage facility.
Oh, yeah.
So that's still not dead, right?
Oh, no, the PC party is still really pushing this hard. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know why more people don't see that party's actually no different, no better than the Liberals. You know, I mean, the great leveler of all of the major parties had to have been really made clear in 2008 when there was only one nay vote to the Federal Sustainable Development Act in 2008, in February 2008. And the fact that, you know, the bill for that act was a private member's bill by John Godfrey, Liberal MP, just before Christmas in 2007, the fact that there was only one so-called conservative voted nay to it should tell people the whole story. And so that's what gave us, you know, David Suzuki Foundation's sustainability plan for Canada, you know. And so I don't know how anybody could vote for any of them. I really don't, even if they don't understand the whole voting thing. How anybody could not see. And, you know, the very fact that even Patrick Brown is now the so-called leader of the Ontario PC party. And, I mean, he voted in favor of this. And, you know, those of us that are elderly like me, we remember full well when the Ontario PC party was decimated years ago. And a lot of the career politicians, PC politicians, you know, they were basically, their careers were rescued by the creation of the new so-called conservative party at the federal level. I remember a lot of people talking about, you know, very nasty stuff where they were saying, well, the rats have jumped the sinking provincial ship and gone to this new federal rescue boat. And it's funny to see now a lot of the same guys coming back down to the provincial level now that, you know, their federal party's not doing so well, and the same old crap.
I don't understand why. I scratch my head so often.
Wow.
Trying to figure out how it is that people are so oblivious to what's right in front of their faces. But I think it has a lot to do with people have stressful lives. They're busy trying to keep their bills paid. And, when they turn on the TV or pick up a newspaper, every story that they read is untrue or screwed with. I don't know, but you'd still think they would be able to figure this out.
Well, the other thing is, you and I agree on one thing. The action where you can really probably do your best work is at the local level. But, if people do that and they don't keep an eye on how it connects to the bigger picture as well, I'm thinking back years, again, I'm getting elderly, so I'm thinking back years when Alberta was just furious. I remember Albertans being furious with Ontarians for voting, for letting the Liberals take over and not making sure the Conservatives got in. This is the provincial. In the early 2000s, they were just livid. A lot of Albertans talking about us being such idiots, but they weren't looking at what the so-called Conservatives were doing to us here in Ontario, right? They had a Conservative government out there and very proud of not letting any Liberals get in.
But they didn't understand, Kathy, what
happened to them more recently with the Wild Rose scandal and Jim Prentice, right? And how many of them in Alberta recognized back in 2008, how many of them actually read Canada's first federal sustainable development strategy report that was, under Jim Prentice? How many of them actually read that? And they noticed, the water conservation targets, the greenhouse gas, which is carbon dioxide targets. How many of them noticed this? How many of them watched John Tory from Alberta, basically trying to outdo, the Liberal government opposition on the climate change mitigation front? It's just insane.
Well, at the same time that we were getting hammered with the Enron electrical system here, they were getting hammered with it with a PC government in Alberta under Ralph Klein.
Well,
and they didn't seem to see any of this stuff. Ralph's a really good old boy. Well, Ralph's sold you down the river.
Well, the thing is, you get election campaigns running, and it's all distraction all the time. The talking points that the parties come up with are the talking points that, they want discussed. Anything, anybody that you and I might want to discuss, it never gets discussed publicly. So if it never gets discussed, it's not an issue.
Well, that's nothing freaked me out more. You ran in the election. I ran in the provincial election and in the local election. But nothing freaked me out in all of this stuff more than when that NDP candidate, who was in the Bob Rae government at the end of the all candidates meetings, came up and asked to shake my hand, and when I asked him why, he just said if I hadn't run, no issue of any importance would have ever been allowed to see the light of day.
Yeah.
And you had us dancing. And that's your politics, folks.
Well,
regardless of the party, they're all talking about the same subjects.
Well, they're all heading towards the same end, just perhaps slight variation in how fast or exactly what method they'll use to get there. And that's what annoys me the most. But when you look at all of the provincial and municipal stuff, it's like I remember I put out a tweet to Patrick Brown, and again, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing, but he was all yipping about he's going to, can the Green Energy Act or whatever. And I said to him, and just what are you going to replace it with, yet keep Ontario aligned to the Federal Sustainable Development Act that you endorsed in 2008? No response.
You're not supposed to remember things like that.
I remember lots of
I know
stuff.
You do.
I think right back to 2005 when and I think back to when Paul Martin, the last election, when Paul Martin and his Liberal government put out a list of, their wish list for legislation, and, there was some deals went through there. And look what the so-called, new Conservative Party, that to me, when you read this stuff and you go back through it, and I kept it at the time, it was nothing but a remake of the old PC Party.
Nothing's different.
You have free and fair trade, support both. You can't. You
can't.
Oxymorons have just kept increasing in the so-called conservative ranks because they really are progressive. It's so sickening to watch all of the parties basically supporting the transformation of Canada into a social democracy. And for anybody that doesn't know what a social democracy is, look it up, because it sure isn't what Canada was allegedly founded to be. It is definitely not a Winchester parliamentary democracy. So again, you go back to it, and there's been writers, I know if anybody wants to Google it, James Delingpole in the UK, he complained bitterly about, this all parties becoming the same. And he refers to this, and again, he refers back to what is sometimes called political triangulation, and, the move towards a social democracy, another word for which might be corporatism. And he wrote about it, he analyzed, he wrote an analogy to the parties all offering the voters yogurt with varying amounts of dog poo in it. And he called it the dog poo fast. And there's he talks about the conservatives. Well, we're going to offer you less dog poo in your yogurt than the other parties. And in the States, there was another writer, and he wrote a series. People can Google this too. It might be hard to find the complete series now. It's been so long, but it was the title of it was called Democrats in Drag. And he too wrote about this global third way movement, which was not capitalist, not communist, sort of a combination. So, when you read the things by writers over in Europe and the UK and in America, and then you look at what's gone on here, it certainly looks like the same thing as far as I'm concerned, and this applies to every party. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, I'm going to call it a duck. No offense to ducks, by the way. But I mean, it only makes sense that if it was so obviously happening everywhere else, it probably did here too.
I got this thing, Kathy, called Democrats in Drag by Steve Farrell.
Yep.
Is that it?
That would be it. Now, whether you can find the complete series, I can't even remember. If I wanted to go through all my archives, I could find exactly.
Well, I'll put this. This is called The Moral Liberal. I don't know how.
I don't know
how those two words get together.
Whether you can. Well, he's probably referring to classical liberalism.
Let me just try this again. But you keep going. I'm just going to.
But when you. Every Canadian, any Canadian, if they haven't read the full proceedings, everything from the beginning to the end, associated with Bill C-474, which was the private member's bill brought forth by John Godfrey in late 2007, just before the Christmas break. They need to read everything, his speech. They need to read the transcripts from the testimonies to the committee after the second reading and the vote in the House of Commons, which I believe, don't quote me, I think it was February 13th, 2008. All you have to do is take a look at that vote and see who voted yes. There was one no vote by a guy in the new Conservative Party who is, by the way, now running for a leadership candidate. For some reason, he voted no. Wouldn't it be interesting to know why he voted no? Why he thinks nobody else voted no, and why it's never been discussed since. Wouldn't that be interesting? But we're not going to hear that, are we? So, and then there's the very interesting, for people who are really politically astute, looking at that vote, that recorded vote, take a look at the people who don't have a vote recorded as well. Like the party leader. The question, why didn't they vote? Were they not there that day? Why weren't they there that day?
Well, I've asked several of them there on important votes why they weren't there that day, especially rural members, when very important rural subjects came up, and the excuses I got why they weren't there were, well, at best, very weak.
Well, again, you had a bill, and its sponsor, his opening speech when he introduced the bill, it was very enlightening. It was based on the principles of the Natural Step, you know, an enviro organization from Sweden, for heaven's sake, which, by the way, has a very active subcomponent here in Canada that, by the way, happened to develop a whole pile of the ICSPs in where? Alberta communities. Jesus.
What was that guy? What's that guy's name? I lost all my tabs that were open.
Which guy?
The guy that what did you call you were talking about here in Ontario or in Canada. We've got this the common, no, what did you call it? The something step.
The natural step.
The natural step. Now that guy, who's huge now, is hooked up with Morris Strong's son. And I can't.
What guy are you talking about? Are you talking about somebody from the Natural Step Canada?
Natural Step Canada. Let me just see if I can dig this guy's name out. I was looking up.
There's one other guy. I don't know if he still is or not, but he was also ran a business, Interfloor or something like that. And I noticed a while back, don't know if he still is or not, he was on the Source Water Protection Committee representing business, Quiddy Conservation out of Belleville.
Well, this guy's hooked up with Morris Strong's son.
Well, I'm not sure which guy you're talking about.
I know I have to go find it again because I lost. Yeah, you have Natural Step, Canada, Sweden, and the Netherlands, right? Italy, Finland, Portugal, China, New Zealand, Switzerland, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And good old Israel.
Yeah, the Natural Step Canada, you talk about the ICSP development process, their ABCD planning. So this is the backward planning that they do. You know, they start with the outcome they want, and then everything behind it falls in place. It's just, but I mean, the Natural Step, I haven't seen too many ICSPs, like so-called local ICSPs in Ontario communities that were developed by the Natural Step. But they sure got them in Alberta. They were big in Alberta.
Yeah, I'm just looking for this associates, board members. When you go through these board members on all these things, you know, this guy, the guy that did this isn't even in here.
Yeah, well, for my purposes, what I was talking about, it doesn't need to go that far, because the opening speech by the sponsor of this federal legislation, okay, and this replaced the one that Chrétien had brought in, the Federal Sustainable Development Act. They didn't cut it, right? Didn't get it imposed Canada-wide. So, I mean, you know, this was the replacement act for the one from 1995. So, and I've written about that on my site. But this one apparently was going to do the job much, much better, and it was modeled after draft legislation that had been developed by a guy from, I think, University of British Columbia. I think it was Simon something or other. Anyway, it's in the proceedings on the bill. If you read the testimony, and a fellow who's a policy guy for the David Suzuki Foundation. So here you have a liberal private members bill, and the sponsor even publicized the fact that it was developed on principles from an outfit in Sweden, and that, you know, the legislation was modeled after a draft that was developed by the David Suzuki Foundation, and doesn't it seem rather odd that there would be only one nay vote to that in the House of Commons among the so-called conservatives?
Right.
I mean, if that doesn't strike you as odd, I don't know.
Well, it was the conservatives that brought Agenda 21 to the country, so.
That after, especially now that he's running for federal leader, and we've just seen Trump elected in the States, so you'd think maybe that if he had voted nay for the right reasons, the reasons that I would have, he'd be really keen to set himself apart from all these other so-called conservative party candidates running for leader and start yipping about sustainable development. I would be, wouldn't you? I mean, he wants to set himself apart from all the rest of them running as candidates, especially the ones that voted in favor of it in 2008. You'd think he'd be just right on that, wouldn't you?
You would think.
Haven't seen a word. I keep watching.
Okay, the guy's named Kathy's Nicholas Parker.
I want to talk to him. I've had no call back. But then again, I got to tell you something. This is really interesting. I couldn't figure out why he wouldn't bother calling somebody back that showed that level of interest. So I went and checked some other stuff out. And I found out, oh, he's got a campaign manager. And then I thought, oh, gee, I remember this guy. He had his own online radio show for a while. Matter of fact, I called into it a couple of times. But then I remember hearing him refer to people who think like me as United Nations conspiracy theorists, inviting us to call in and yell at him. I thought, who could be bothered? So maybe that's the problem.
Well, it sounds like the problem.
Well, it just gets odder and odder and odder. So, when you talk about all of the excitement of a new Conservative Party leader, and then the following excitement with another federal election, excuse me for not being very excited about it at all.
Well, the elections are complete and total fraud, but,
I'm talking about a different aspect of it than you usually do here. I'm just talking about the absolute lack of any discussion by anyone who wants to get elected, either a party leader or as a candidate, talking about the main issue.
Well,
they don't want to talk about the disease.
Well, they can't. They can't, because if they do,
symptoms that their party can take a slightly different stand on. You got the Liberals. Oh, we're going to mitigate climate. We're going to bring in cap and trade. Then you got the so-called conservative. Oh, no, that's all wrong. We're going to just put in a revenue-neutral carbon tax, and instead of these big bad Liberals and their industrial wind turbines and big solar farms that ruin agricultural land, but we'll keep really quiet about pump storage, fit contracts for small water power that are utterly useless and driving up our bills. Not a word against the municipalities or the Ontario Municipalities Association and their local authority services programs for solar rooftop. Not a word about that. Eh? Not a word again from the people.
No, well, that's the thing. This is what that's what's so disgusting. Well, the media does not. The media is absolutely fully aware of what's going on. The politicians are fully aware of what's going on. The universities are fully aware of what's going on, and we seem to be able to put all this information out through all these media channels and the schools and everything else, and no one at any level is alerting the general public to what the hell's going on. Well, and that I find extremely disgusting.
Look at the municipalities. You got some that are so proud of declaring themselves unwilling hosts to wind turbines. Oh, that's just lovely. How many rooftop solar projects have you got?
Yeah.
I'm not. Then there's again.
I know, they badmouth one thing.
Municipal leaders have the gall to start screaming and yelling at the province about how high the electricity rates are, and it's ruining the lives of their local taxpayers. Meanwhile, they're sitting there sucking back our money.
Exactly.
With their solar projects, street light conversions to LEDs, you name it, on and on and on. how many gas tax transfer agreements have they signed?
Exactly.
So
I mean, these people are absolute criminals, and there's no other way to describe them.
They're absolutely
When we were trying to fight windmills here, they said they couldn't fight them or fight with the OMB because if they were sued or lose, it would cost the taxpayers too much money. And then all the windmills came in, and then they said, well, we're not a willing host anymore after the windmills are in. Then they turn around and embrace this next scam, which is a gas scam. It's just disgusting.
Well, excuse me while I do a little spinning here.
Now, this is the guy I was looking for, and I found him, Nicholas Parker. You know this guy?
No.
Huh?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I put a link in, and he's the founding chairman of Clean Tech. You've heard of that.
Yeah.
And former chairman of Corporate Knights Media. You've heard of Corporate Knights.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy's hooked up with Morris Strong's son. This is one, and he's from Natural Step. This is one bad news dude.
Yeah.
That you never see in the media, you know. He's picked up kind of almost like where Morris Strong left off from.
Jim Neal. Yeah.
But you don't hear about these people.
Basically been out of Canada long enough, but Jim McNeil was here till he died, I think.
Jim McNeil died, yeah. Nobody really heard of Jim McNeil.
Man, have I heard of Jim McNeil. He was a huge player.
He was huge player. I mean, he
report, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
A lot of famous Canadians. I mean, how many people really followed Jake Epp from being Mulrooney's Minister of Health to being the chairman of the board of the Ontario Power Generation, for heaven's sake, just till what, last year?
Yeah.
He finally stepped down. So, I mean, and I mean, look at what Jake Epp and Marc Lalonde, his predecessor, did for us, Again, successive governments, successive ministers. I mean, these guys don't just walk away. And when you look at...
No, none of them go away.
No.
Joe Clark, people say, Joe who? Joe's been a very, very busy boy. Joe Clark wasn't the leader of the country long, but Joe Clark has been extremely freaking busy.
Well,
and
we've covered a lot of territory, but I still say if people just would read everything to do with Bill C-474 and the legislation and the way it was shoved through, and the lack of dissent. I mean, a lot of people don't even know about that. And then if they download a copy of the first Sustainable Development Strategy and they realize that this act, that only had one nay in our House of Commons in the spring of 2008.
Yeah, how is that possible?
Required the development of a federal sustainable development strategy that is based on the precautionary principle. If the vote alone doesn't tell them what they need to know, and it should, then seeing a copy of that first strategy that was so proudly presented to Canadians by Jim Prentice, and they thoroughly read the whole thing, including all of the appendix, and they still don't get it, and they don't see the ties to the UN's new International Economic Order from 1974. They don't see the ties to Agenda 21. They don't see the ties to Agenda 2030. And by the way, how many Canadians realize that our Canadian delegation to the UN was, like all the rest of them, they adopted that Agenda 2030, the same Sunday morning that Harper went to the Governor General and had that last election called.
Yeah.
If they don't realize the support of every major party behind that Agenda 2030, and they can't make these connections, then they deserve what they got coming to them. And if they'll still go and vote for these guys that won't even discuss it publicly, during an election campaign, be it for themselves as a candidate or as a party leader or anything else, well, the sad thing is we're all going to suffer. Because no matter what they do at the provincial level, no matter what they say, good luck getting away with actually doing anything that contradicts the requirements of that federal act. That federal act is the means of implementing the global agenda and imposing it on it.
Yeah. I've been waiting all these years, for just one politician to stand up on a soapbox somewhere and just scream bloody murder.
Basically pull a Donald Trump and do it here in Canada. Okay? Just spit it out and say what you really think. Now, to me, the natural one to have done that would have been the guy, the only MP in the House of Commons that voted nay to that act. Haven't seen it, have we?
No.
Why?
Good question.
Well, it makes you question, why then did he vote against it? Was it a fluke?
I have no idea on that because...
So why would you have the guts to be the only one to vote no and then never talk about
it again?
Especially once you're running for party leader. There's got to be a reason.
Well, which country was that? I saw almost the identical thing. Which country? I forget which country that was. It was almost the identical thing that you just described.
Well, I've never heard him say any. I've never heard the Conservatives slamming, Martin's legislation that created this beautiful, beautiful method to get the local governments to implement the global plan that the national government had agreed to. And that was the New Deal for cities. And this was the gas tax transfers.
This has been going on so long. I don't know if you remember the video with Hazel McCallum, where about high density, and not to use the word density. This has been going on for so freaking long. At all levels of the political game, and it almost reminds me of what George Carlin said. It's a big club. We're not in. It's the same big club that used to beat you over the head, tell you what to think, what the and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's like somehow the general public is completely unaware of any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, what are you making? Making
I'm sorry, but I have another load of laundry to start. I know this is very
laundry.
For listeners, but
listen, let me bring Chris.
I have a lot of work I have to do at the same time. Yeah.
Let me bring Chris in here for a second. He just called. I don't know if he, for some reason. Yeah, there he is. Are you there, Chris?
Hey.
Hey, say
Hi, Kathy.
Have you ever met Kathy before?
Nope.
Yeah, once or twice.
No,
on phone.
Chris, I just wanted to compliment you on your depth of knowledge. I think.
I wish I could supply you with all of the links and all of the quotes, but it would go for days,
Well, maybe we should do that someday. We should just load out all the links and let people read them, and that's all you can do is encourage.
It's so fascinating because our rinky-dink little village here, as I call it, in our reef back in 2011, they were so determined to put Marmora on the map. Little do they realize how Marmora is on the map, because I don't think you could find a better place in Canada to see all of this nonsense in action, especially the Whig Tory same old story crap. And, the last time we had a provincial election, it was the same as the one before that, and it looks like they're lining the next one up to be the same, because every major party, and our mate Reeve was so proud of this in a former say, it's one of the only, projects that every major party supports. And indeed, he's right. The interesting part is this Marmora pumped storage nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's the only party leader that has actually come to Marmora and given it, the thumbs up was the Progressive Conservative leader, and when it was Hudak. I'm just waiting to see if our current MPP and the guys who's running as candidate now to be our next MPP, because our riding's been split, okay? So we got a new riding here in the northern section. And the guy that just won the candidacy recently is our former federal conservative MP who's now running under Brown. And he's now come out and joined our current MPP, who's going to be the MPP for the southern part of our riding, in his support for the Marmora Pump Storage Project.
So these guys, these conservative candidates are all gung-ho for the pump storage, but they're all bitching and complaining about Kathleen Wynne's Liberals being the problem with the high cost of energy. And yet the PC party is promoting a absolute useless piece of garbage, which is going to enrich Northland Power. And basically put your community in the basically danger zone.
Well, yeah, it creates environmental hazards. A brand new would create a whole new catastrophic flooding hazard from some of the urban area of our village, and it'll drive up the electricity rates. So I mean, it's a real winner of a scam. Yeah, and but most people, they don't know the finer details, so they don't have a clue. And the sad thing is, the conservatives claim that they're for more fiscal responsibility than the liberals, right? And so far, let's see, we were forced to donate $5,000 of our local tax dollars to a promotional campaign for this proposal back in 2011, which
wouldn't you think Northland would be putting out the money for the promotion?
Yeah, I imagine they did put out some of their own money, but why would they put out their own when the taxpayers could
that was the point I was trying to get to.
Well, that was the local, but then it went provincial, okay? So, and they've had two $50,000 grants now, okay, from the provincial level, from Jeff Leal's OMAFRA program, from their Rural Economic Development Program. And the first one developed this so-called Recharge Marmora Tourism Plan, which was originally called the Marmora Pump Storage Tourism Plan. Okay? And that one was released, a couple of years ago to great hoopla locally.
Be careful of that tourism plan, because that's one of the things they sold the windmills on, and there's so many tour buses here, the local people can't even get on the highway.
Yeah,
no, that's not true. We've never seen a tour bus.
But did you have a $50,000 grant to your local economic development department to help push these wind farms? I doubt it. I mean,
there was a lot of money flying around here.
Well, you should see. I mean, this is $50,000 from a provincial minister, in our economic development department. They hired this company that produced this tourism plan, but this is the good part, okay? So here's $50,000 from all of the generous taxpayers of Ontario, and this plan was trotted off to the Minister of Tourism and Economic Development or something. Anyway, it was trotted off to Toronto with a delegation from Marmora. It included John Wright from Northland Power. And, all these wonderful statements our Reid gave according to, what the minister had said. And then a week later, they presented it locally. And there was a copy of it in the local agenda and whatnot. And so I was taking a look at this thing. And up until that time, since we first heard of it, it had been referred to as a $700 million private sector investment, okay? All of a sudden, out comes this plan that the taxpayers of Ontario donated $50,000 for, and it referred to it as a $750 million. The price went up. Public sector investment. Mm-hmm. So I got up at the next council meeting and I said, because one of the councillors had been bragging before and said that it was so wonderful, he found it so gripping, he had to stay up to finish reading the whole thing. I found it really gripping too. But I only had to go to page 5 to the executive summary and see this that completely contradicted everything we'd heard to date, and I found that really gripping. So lo and behold, that copy disappeared offline because they'd already put it on the website. And it disappeared and was replaced with the corrected version that stands there to date. But there's no notice to the public that this is a correction of the seriously flawed first version that the minister had been presented with before the local public. So there was your waste of $50,000 from taxpayers across Ontario. Now you'd think maybe the fiscally responsible Conservatives might have been a little pissed about that. Nope, they never, not a peep. So there you go. That's how much they care about the taxpayers of Ontario. But it gets worse, because that didn't cut the mustard. So out came another $50,000 grant more recently for a follow-up. Another tourism plan, this time a more specific tourism site mapping plan for the project area. Okay?
And the next one that you see will be produced by Disneyland or something.
Well, I don't know if we'll ever see a next one, because the public, other than the local people who happen to attend the council meeting in person to see the slideshow presentation of it by the consulting firm that got the money and John Wright, it's never gone online. Apparently, it's a secret. But this one, of course, was built on the flawed, pump storage tourism plan that had previously wasted $50,000. Didn't work, so this one was going to cut it. And it was really quite the plan. It was described by the consultant as, a tourism attraction on a national level scale. You're talking all kinds of stuff up there at the mine site. And the mine site itself, by the way, has been identified in the official plan since I first heard of this project as an environmentally sensitive land. So that would prohibit industrial development. And then all of the land surrounding it was in 2013 identified by the...
But it's not an industrial development. It's a tourist attraction.
Well, you got to remember, when we first heard of this but didn't know what it was yet, it was advertised as a significant industrial development.
I know.
That was first.
I know, but...
It became a green energy project. That didn't work. Then it became an economic development and jobs booster. That didn't work. So then it became a tourism project. Now,
right.
You got to remember, I don't know why, this is another thought, why in the world people would believe that the Minister of Energy would supply a power purchase agreement for a tourism project. That itself doesn't make sense.
Well, it depends which office you're sitting in, what kind of sense it makes.
Well,
right? It makes no sense to any thinking man or woman.
You're getting paid economic development money to, sell it as that. It would make perfect sense to you. But
Kathy, I got a question. We're going to run out of time here soon. I got a question for you. And I hate even talking about it, but you ran in the last municipal election.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Was it worth the trouble?
Why was it worth it?
No, was it worth the trouble?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was for personal reasons as much as anything else. It was because it gave me a great excuse to go out and knock on all the doors I possibly could.
And get the feeling from the people, right?
Right. And the other thing is I've been smeared a lot locally as, that everybody supports this except for, a couple of people.
Well, yeah, I'm saying.
So, I certainly didn't win, didn't even come close. But, 472 votes is far from a couple of people. So that was really nice to see even that level of support, because the smearing that went on was incredible. The media.
Oh, I suffered the same thing here. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. But, I mean, it was really...
But this is why I tell people, you got to get as many people as you can to run. But a lot of people are fearful of the process, and it's not really much of a process, is it?
No, it's not.
It's really nothing to be fearful of.
No, it's not. And it's really, it's a joy to actually talk to people one-on-one. I only actually had 3 that were hostile in the entire municipality and all the doors I knocked on.
Yeah.
You know, it was most of it.
And I think the other part, Kathy, is that you got to plant some seeds in people's heads along the way. And I think they're probably looking at things a little bit differently, a lot of them. And I think they are very thankful that you came and knocked on their door. And I would think if you run in 2018, you will find your vote numbers go up, way up.
That could well be. The problem is that what I'm wondering if you'd see go up, because what I was hoping to see that I didn't see is that a number of those 472 people would start joining me at council meetings and actually say something.
Well, you're asking quite a bit there.
Yeah, so again, to just go and put a name on a ballot is one thing. To actually do something yourself to prove that you do support this is entirely different.
Well,
That's been a disappointment.
Well, I found the difference between when I ran in 2010 and 2014, the discussions we could have in the difference in those 4 years was like night and day. It was amazing.
It is.
Subjects who couldn't go near in 2010, people were actually bringing up in 2014. Before we brought them up. So it just told me that people are starting to watch and look.
Yeah.
And I think 2018 will be much more positive than 2010 or 2014. I do believe people are moving in the right direction, but they need people that they can support versus, voting the lesser of two evils kind of nonsense, right?
Yeah, well, one thing I took door to door with me was printed evidence and explained to people one-on-one exactly the mechanism at the local level and at the federal, how this global agenda was being imposed on us. In Marmara, again, the Northland Project isn't the worst thing that has been done to us here.
No, I know.
It hasn't even built yet. But because there was so much public bragging about it, it was a great example for me.
Oh, it's a lightning rod kind of thing.
It is. That's what it was.
So we're just about out of time here. So thank you so much for coming on, Kathy. You always make me smile. And Chris, you're here still, I think. Is Chris still with us? Chris, you still there? I think he's got himself muted out. Anyways, I want to thank Chris for calling in. Didn't get to talk. Got to say hi to Kathy. Hal's on at 3 o'clock behind the woodshed. And that's where we're going to take all the politicians someday, behind the woodshed, and give them a bit of a spanking and drive.
Just don't elect them and let them suffer the same fate as we are that they planned for us.
Exactly.
They just join us in misery,
Exactly. So,
honest to goodness, it's terrible, isn't it?
It is terrible, and each day it gets more ludicrous.
Oh, it does.
Like that guy was talking to downtown. He's, no, it's just natural gas. I said, well, no, it's
well, right
same.
now it's mainly natural gas.
Well, sure
I
it is.
would imagine if it follows the trend of everything else and it follows the decarbonization and climate policy strategies and sustainable...
Well, if you just Google in replacing natural gas with renewable gas, you will see the government's involved in it big time. So.
And you'll see that become a more predominant fit contract will be biogas, on farm, landfill.
They'll bring it in quietly, and once they get those new lines in, then the biodigesters, and the fit programs will start to fly again.
It's just like the small water power, right? They're really going to be popular, I think, in the near future, especially if the PCs get in. They love water power because there's no local opposition to that like there is wind.
Well, actually, they turned one down up in Southampton. I hear music, Kathy. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Remember, Pal's on deck at 3 o'clock.
Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Censorship, force them out, fuck them back. It's only for they bomb, they shoot, they kill, they master, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes gun, trees, lie to your face.